The mining platform on asteroid Beta 7 exploded in brilliant orange flames, taking 43 human workers with it. David Hayes watched the destruction through his ship's viewing screen, his hands clenched so tight around the command chair that his knuckles turned white. The official report would say it was an accident, a gas leak, poor human engineering. Everyone in the galaxy would believe it, everyone except the humans who knew better. 3 Corvin destroyers hung in space near the debris field like metal vultures, their weapon systems still glowing from the recent firing. The aliens made no attempt to hide what they had done. Why would they? Humans were weak. Humans were stupid. Humans couldn't fight back even if they wanted to. That was exactly what Earth wanted them to think. David forced his expression to remain neutral as his communications officer looked up from her station. The young woman's eyes were red with tears she couldn't shed. Not yet. Not while the enemy could see them. "Sir, the Corvin commander is requesting to speak with you," she said, her voice barely steady. "Put him through," David replied, settling, back in his chair and arranging his features into the mask of helpless confusion that all human officers had practiced for years. The main screen flickered, and Commander Vok appeared. The Corvin looked like a cross between a lizard and a rhinoceros, with thick gray skin and small yellow eyes that glowed with cruel satisfaction. His massive frame filled the command chair of his ship, and David could see other Corvin warriors, moving in the background. "Human captain," Vok said, his voice coming through the translator as a low growl. "Your mining operation was violating Corvin space. We have corrected this error." David nodded slowly as if trying to process information that was too complex for his simple human brain. I understand, Commander Vok. We didn't know this was your territory. Our records showed it as neutral space." Vok's lipless mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "Your records are wrong. Many things will change soon. The Corvin Empire grows stronger while humans grow weaker. This is the natural order. Of course, Commander, we don't want any trouble. We'll file the proper reports with the Coalition." "You will file nothing," Vok snarled. "This incident never happened. Your workers died in an accident. You will report it as such, or more accidents will follow." David let his shoulders slump in defeat. "Yes, sir. Whatever you say." The transmission ended, and the Corvin ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving David and his crew alone with the cooling wreckage of their people's lives. The bridge was silent for a long moment before David stood and walked to the tactical station. "Lieutenant Ross," he said quietly, "did you get clean readings on their shield harmonics?" The tactical officer nodded grimly. "Every detail, sir. Their weapons signatures, too. Command will be very interested in this data." David looked back at the debris field. 43 good people had died today to maintain humanity's greatest secret. It was a secret that had cost thousands of lives over the past 20 years, but it was also the only thing standing between Earth and total annihilation. The galaxy saw humans as the weakest species in the Coalition. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were primitive projectile launchers that could barely scratch modern armor. Their soldiers were small and fragile compared to the mighty Corvin warriors or the technologically enhanced Althari troops. Most alien species viewed humans as useful for manual labor and little else. It was the greatest lie in galactic history. Hidden beneath Earth's surface, massive shipyards worked around the clock-building vessels that made Corvin dreadnoughts look like toys. Deep underground facilities housed weapons research that had advanced far beyond anything the aliens possessed. Every primitive human patrol ship like David's carried experimental technology that could disable entire fleets. But the cost of maintaining that deception grew heavier each day. David's ship, the Endurance, looked exactly like what the aliens expected from humans. Its hull was painted in dull gray colors and showed deliberate scorch marks from maintenance accidents. The weapon ports were designed to appear crude and ineffective. Even the bridge had been built to look cramped and outdated compared to alien standards. Yet beneath that carefully crafted exterior, the Endurance carried shield generators that could withstand direct hits from Corvan plasma cannons. Its primitive weapons were actually precision instruments capable of punching through any known armor. Most importantly, it was equipped with sensors so advanced they could track cloaked ships and record detailed information about any alien technology they encountered. Every patrol mission was actually an intelligence-gathering operation. Every act of submission was carefully planned theater. Every dead human worker was a price paid for information that would one day save their entire species. David activated his ship's secure communications system and began composing his real report. Admiral Ruth Sterling would need to know about the Corvans' increasing aggression. The enemy was growing bolder, testing human responses and pushing boundaries that had held stable for years. On Earth, President Maria Santos was finishing another humiliating meeting with alien ambassadors. The Corvan representative had demanded increased tribute from human colonies. The Althari delegate had suggested that humans might serve better as a client species under alien protection. Through it all, Santos had nodded and smiled and promised to consider their generous offers. None of them suspected that the human president had access to weapons that could turn their homeworlds into smoking ruins. The deception had started small. When humans first made contact with alien civilization, they quickly realized they were walking into a galaxy where the strong dominated the weak without mercy. Species that showed advanced technology too early often found themselves facing preemptive attacks from established powers who saw potential threats. So humanity chose a different path. They would appear weak while growing strong in secret. They would let aliens underestimate them while quietly studying every aspect of galactic technology and military doctrine. When the time came for revelation, humans would be ready. But that time seemed further away than ever. Each passing year brought new humiliations and new deaths. How many more mining platforms would explode? How many more human families would be torn apart by alien cruelty before Earth could drop its mask? David finished his report and sent it through encrypted channels to Earth Command. Somewhere deep beneath the planet's surface, analysts would study the data and add it to humanity's growing understanding of alien capabilities. Every piece of information brought them closer to the day when the galaxy would learn what humans could really do. Until then, they would continue to play their role. They would bow and scrape and pretend to be grateful for whatever scraps the aliens threw them. They would watch their people die and call it accidents. They would endure contempt and hatred while building the tools of future victory. The stars outside showed no mercy, and neither would humanity when their time finally came. The distress beacon screamed across space like a wounded animal, its automated message repeating every 30 seconds. David Hayes had been tracking the signal for 6 hours as his ship moved toward the human mining station on Titan 7. Each repetition made his jaw clench tighter. Colony under attack. Corvan warships in system, requesting immediate assistance. Colony under attack. Through his command deck's main viewer, David could see the mining station hanging in space like a broken metal flower. 3 Corvan heavy cruisers surrounded it, their weapon ports glowing red with charging energy. Smaller Corvan fighters buzzed around the human facility like angry insects, occasionally firing at the station's weak shields just to watch them flicker. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a transmission from the Corvan fleet commander." "Put it through," David ordered, though every instinct screamed at him to charge forward and start shooting. The screen filled with the scarred face of Admiral Brutus, a massive Corvan whose reputation for cruelty was known throughout the galaxy. The alien's small eyes glowed with satisfaction as he studied David's bridge. "Ah, another human patrol ship comes to watch," Brutus said, his translator rendering his growls into mocking human speech. "How brave of you to arrive after the fighting is over." "This is Captain David Hayes of the Earth vessel Endurance," David replied, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Titan 7 is a registered human colony. You have no authority here." Brutus threw back his massive head and laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Authority? Human, I have 3 warships and you have 1 pathetic patrol boat. That is all the authority I need." On the screen, David could see Corvan soldiers moving through the mining station's corridors. Human workers were being herded into cargo bays like livestock. Some tried to resist and were struck down by energy weapons. Others simply stood in shocked silence as their lives were torn apart. "What do you want?" David asked, though he already knew the answer. "What I have already taken," Brutus replied. "This mining operation now belongs to the Corvan Empire. These human workers will serve as our labor force. You will return to your pathetic Earth and inform your leaders that this is how things will be." David's tactical officer caught his eye and shook her head slightly. The gesture meant what they both knew. Even if David revealed his ship's true capabilities and destroyed the Corvan vessels, it would expose humanity's secret to the entire galaxy. The aliens would send word to their fleets before they died. Earth's carefully maintained deception would crumble. 230 human civilians would die to preserve that secret. "I understand," David said, hating every word. "We will not interfere." "Wise choice, human. But first, you will watch something." The screen switched to an internal view of the mining station. Corvan soldiers had lined up 20 human workers against a bulkhead. David recognized some of them, miners and engineers he had transported to Titan 7 just 3 months ago. They had families waiting for them back on Earth. "These humans attempted to destroy mining equipment rather than surrender it," Brutus announced. "I will make an example of them so others understand the price of resistance." "Wait," David said desperately. "They're not soldiers, they're just workers. They don't know anything about military protocols." "Exactly," Brutus replied. "If workers must die for resistance, imagine what happens to soldiers." The Corvan troops raised their weapons. David watched helplessly as 20 human beings were executed for the crime of trying to protect their workplace. The miners died bravely, standing straight and refusing to beg. Their courage made David's shame burn even hotter. "Magnificent," Brutus said as the bodies fell. "Now you understand how things work in Corvan space. Return to Earth, human. Tell them what you have seen." The transmission ended, leaving David staring at empty space. Around him, his crew sat in stunned silence. They all knew their orders. Observe and report. Do not engage. Maintain the deception at any cost. But the cost was getting higher every day. David's ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Titan 7 and its enslaved population behind. During the long journey back to Earth encrypted, messages flooded in from other human patrol ships. The Corvan Empire was moving aggressively throughout human space. Mining stations were being seized. Cargo ships were being stopped and searched. Human colonies were being forced to accept Corvan protection. Most disturbing of all, the attacks were coordinated. This wasn't random piracy or opportunistic raiding. The Corvans were following a plan designed to test human responses and measure their resistance capabilities. They were probing for weakness before launching something much larger. On Earth, emergency meetings raged in the hidden command centers, buried beneath the planet's surface. Admiral Ruth Sterling argued passionately for maintaining their cover story. General Patrick Moore pushed for limited retaliation. President Maria Santos listened to both sides while reports of new atrocities poured in from across human space. "They're testing us," Admiral Sterling insisted. "Every provocation is designed to make us reveal our true capabilities. If we show our hand too early, every alien species in the galaxy will unite against us. And if we wait too long," General Moore replied, "there won't be any humans left to protect. We're losing colonies every day. Our people are being enslaved and murdered while we play cosmic chess." Santos studied the tactical displays showing Corvan fleet movements. The aliens were massing forces near their border with human space, not just raiding ships, but full battle fleets including their newest dreadnoughts. "How long before they move on Earth itself?" she asked. Sterling consulted her reports. "Intelligence suggests 6 months, maybe less. Admiral Brutus has been promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander. He's assembling the largest Corvan armada in history." "For what purpose?" "Complete subjugation of human space. They don't want to destroy us. They want to own us. Every human in the galaxy would become property of the Corvan Empire." Santos walked to the massive viewing screen that showed Earth's hidden shipyards. Hundreds of human dreadnoughts floated in their concealed berths, each one capable of destroying entire alien fleets. The weapons they carried could crack planets. The technology they housed surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen, but none of it mattered if humanity revealed itself too early and faced a united alien alliance. "Admiral Brutus is making this personal," Santos said finally. "He's not just following orders, he enjoys causing us pain. That's his weakness." "How do we exploit it?" Moore asked. Santos smiled grimly. "We let him think he's winning. We let him assemble his great armada and point it at Earth. We let him believe he's about to enslave the entire human species. And then we show him what humans are really capable of when they stop pretending to be harmless." Deep space sensors were already detecting the Corvan buildup. Admiral Brutus was gathering ships from across his empire, calling in favors from allied species and preparing for what he clearly intended to be the final solution to the human problem. Earth's long masquerade was finally coming to an end. Soon, the galaxy would learn that the weakest species in the coalition had been hiding strength beyond their wildest imaginations. The only question was whether humanity could maintain their deception long enough to spring their trap. Space around Earth tore apart like fabric as the largest invasion fleet in galactic history dropped out of hyperspace. 312 Corvan warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with fresh battle paint and their weapon systems already charging for combat. At the center of this armada hung the Conquest, Admiral Brutus's personal flagship. The massive dreadnought dwarfed even other Corvan capital ships, its hull bristling with enough firepower to level continents. Brutus had spent months gathering this fleet from every corner of the Corvan Empire, calling in debts and making promises to allied species who wanted to see humanity crushed. David Hayes watched the invasion unfold from his patrol ship positioned near Neptune's orbit. His orders had been simple: maintain position and record everything. Do not engage under any circumstances. Earth Command needed detailed sensor readings of every Corvan vessel before the real fighting began. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "that's the entire Corvan Third Fleet, plus reserves from the 6th and 9th. I'm reading over 40 dreadnoughts." David nodded grimly. Through his ship's sensors, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue marble, apparently defenseless. Against the approaching storm, the planet's orbital defenses looked pathetic compared to the alien armada, a few dozen automated platforms and some ancient-looking satellites that seemed held together with hope and spare parts. Any alien commander looking at Earth would see easy prey. That was exactly what humanity wanted them to see. "Primitive Earth vessel," a voice boomed across all communication channels. "This is Admiral Brutus of the Corvan Imperial Fleet. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." David activated his response transmitter, making sure his voice carried just the right note of terrified confusion. "Admiral, this is Captain David Hayes. We're not armed for combat. We're just a patrol ship." Brutus's laughter echoed across space. "Perfect. You will witness the end of human independence. Watch carefully, little human, and remember what happens to species that refuse to bow before Corvan might." The massive fleet began its approach toward Earth, moving in a formation designed to maximize psychological impact. Brutus wanted humanity to see their doom coming slowly, to understand the hopelessness of their situation. He planned to accept Earth's surrender personally. to stand in the human capital and watch their leaders kneel before him. On Earth, President Maria Santos stood in the hidden command center buried 3 miles beneath the planet's surface. Around her, hundreds of technicians monitored displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. Each Corvan ship was tracked and analyzed. Their weapon signatures were recorded. Their shield harmonics were measured and cataloged. All defense platforms. "Report ready," Admiral Sterling announced from her position at the tactical center. "Underground shipyards are prepared for emergency launch. All personnel are at battle stations." Santos nodded and activated the recording system. Her words would be broadcast across the galaxy after the first shots were fired. Assuming any alien witnesses survived to hear them. "My fellow humans," she began, "for 23 years we have hidden our true nature from the galaxy. We chose to appear weak not from cowardice, but from hope. We believed that intelligence and patience could triumph over violence and aggression. We were wrong." She paused, thinking of all the lives lost maintaining their deception. The miners, killed on distant asteroids. The colonists enslaved on frontier worlds. The patrol crews who had to watch atrocities without fighting back. Today we end the masquerade. Today the galaxy learns what happens when you mistake human restraint for human weakness. Today we show them what we are truly capable of when the gloves come off. Above Earth's surface, the first Corvan scouts were probing the planet's defenses. They found exactly what they expected: outdated satellites with primitive sensors and defense platforms armed with kinetic weapons that belonged in a museum. The humans hadn't even bothered to hide their military installations. Everything was out in the open, begging to be destroyed. Admiral Brutus reviewed the tactical data from his command throne aboard the Conquest. Earth's defenses were even more pathetic than intelligence had suggested. This wouldn't be a battle, it would be an extermination. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Begin bombardment of military targets. I want those defense platforms eliminated before we demand surrender." The Corvan heavy cruisers moved forward, their massive plasma cannons charging for the killing blow. Earth hung before them like ripe fruit, ready to be plucked. That was when David Hayes received the message he had been waiting for his entire career. "All units, this is Earth Command," Admiral Sterling's voice crackled across secure channels. "Protocol 7 is now authorized. I repeat, Protocol 7 is authorized. Drop all pretenses and engage with extreme prejudice." David felt something, cold and sharp, settle in his chest. Around him, his crew began activating systems that had been hidden for decades. The primitive patrol ship started shedding its disguise like a snake shedding skin. "Sir," his weapons officer said, "all systems show green. We have target lock on the Corvan flagship." "Sir," his engineer added, "stealth systems are online. They can't see us anymore." David studied his tactical display. The Corvan fleet was spread out in an attack formation, confident in their overwhelming superiority. They had no idea they were about to face an enemy that had spent 2 decades studying their every weakness. "Target the Conquest's main weapon array," David ordered. "One shot. Make it count." Around Earth, other human patrol ships were receiving similar orders. The planet's primitive defense satellites were powering up weapon systems that defied every known law of physics. Deep beneath the surface, massive launch bays were opening for the first time in 20 years. Admiral Brutus never saw David's ship. The Endurance had become completely invisible to Corvan sensors, just another patch of empty space in the cosmic darkness. When David fired, the plasma lance that erupted from his primitive patrol boat carried more destructive power than an entire Corvan battle group. The beam struck the Conquest's primary weapon mount and burned straight through to the ship's core. The massive dreadnought, pride of the Corvan fleet, broke apart like a child's toy. Secondary explosions lit up the darkness as ammunition stores detonated and fusion reactors went critical. Admiral Brutus had just enough time to scream before his flagship became an expanding cloud of superheated metal. Across the Corvan fleet, alarm sirens began wailing. Sensors that should have detected the attacking ship showed nothing but empty space. Tactical computers struggled to explain how a primitive human patrol boat had just destroyed their most powerful vessel with a single shot. The answer came as Earth's real defenses finally revealed themselves. The planet's surface opened like a blooming flower. Hidden launch bays that had been invisible moments before disgorged hundreds of human warships, each one larger and more advanced than anything the Corvins possessed. Weapons platforms that had appeared ancient suddenly bristled with energy cannons that could crack moons. Most shocking of all, the ships rising from Earth looked nothing like the crude vessels humanity had shown the galaxy for decades. These were works of art as much as instruments of war, sleek, deadly, and clearly built with technology that made Corvin innovation seem primitive. "This is Admiral Ruth Sterling of the Human Star Force," a voice announced across all frequencies. "For 23 years, we have endured your contempt while hoping for peace. You have chosen war instead. Now you will learn the price of underestimating humanity." The real battle was about to begin, and the Corvins were discovering they had brought knives to a nuclear war. The death of Admiral Brutus sent shockwaves through the Corvin fleet that went far beyond the physical destruction of their flagship. In the span of 3 seconds, their entire understanding of reality had been shattered. The weak, primitive humans had just vaporized the most powerful warship in their armada with a single shot from a vessel they had dismissed as harmless. Captain Vec, now the ranking Corvin officer aboard the heavy cruiser Domination, stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His sensors still couldn't locate the human ship that had fired the killing shot. It was as if the attack had come from empty space itself. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, his voice cracking with fear. "Massive energy signatures detected around Earth. The planet is changing." Vec turned his attention to the main viewer and felt his blood turn to ice. Earth's surface was opening in dozens of locations, revealing structures that definitely hadn't been there moments before. What he had taken for primitive defense satellites were transforming, unfolding like mechanical flowers to reveal weapon systems that dwarfed anything in the Corvin arsenal. But that wasn't the worst part. Rising from hidden bays across Earth's surface came ships that made Vec question everything he knew about human technology. These weren't the crude, boxy vessels he had seen in intelligence reports. These were magnificent works of engineering, sleek predators that moved through space with deadly grace. Each one was larger than a Corvin dreadnought, and they carried weapon signatures that his computers couldn't even classify. "How many ships are launching?" Vec asked weakly. "Sir, we count over 400 and still rising. And sir, they're all invisible to our targeting systems until they choose to reveal themselves." Vec realized with growing horror that humanity hadn't just been hiding advanced technology. They had built an entire secret military force that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. For 23 years, while the Corvins had laughed at human weakness, Earth had been preparing for this exact moment. Admiral Ruth Sterling stood on the bridge of the Determination, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The vessel had been built specifically for this day, the moment when Earth would finally drop its mask and show the galaxy what humans could achieve when they stopped pretending to be harmless. "Fleet status report," she ordered. "All ships have cleared launch bays," her tactical officer replied. 412 vessels now in formation. Stealth systems are operational across the fleet. The enemy can only target ships we allow them to see." Sterling nodded and opened a channel to address the surviving Corvin forces. Her words would also be broadcast across the galaxy, carried by relay stations that would ensure every species heard humanity's declaration. "Corvin fleet, this is Admiral Ruth Sterling. Your invasion force is surrounded and outgunned. You have exactly 60 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why underestimating humanity was the last mistake your empire will ever make." On the Corvin heavy cruiser, Captain Vec was frantically trying to coordinate with his remaining ships. The fleet that had arrived with such confidence was now scattered and confused. Many vessels were trying to retreat, only to discover that their hyperspace engines had been disabled by some kind of jamming field they couldn't detect or counter. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving messages from across the fleet. Ships are reporting massive damage from invisible attackers. The Ravager has lost main power. The Crusher is venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches." Vec looked at his tactical display and saw the truth that chilled him to his core. Scattered across the battlefield were dozens of human patrol ships, vessels he had ignored as harmless, systematically dismantling Corvan cruisers with weapons that shouldn't exist. Each primitive human ship was revealing advanced stealth systems, shield technology that laughed at Corvan weapons, and firepower that could cripple ships 10 times their size. Every human vessel in the system had been hiding its true capabilities. Every patrol ship was actually an advanced warship. Every defense satellite was actually a weapons platform. Every piece of human technology that had seemed crude and outdated was actually sophisticated beyond Corvan understanding. The humans hadn't just been playing weak, they had been playing stupid while secretly becoming the most advanced military. "Force in the galaxy. 60 seconds have elapsed," Admiral Sterling announced. "Since you have chosen to remain hostile, we will now provide a practical demonstration of human military technology." What followed could barely be called a battle. It was more like a scientific experiment conducted by a superior intelligence on primitive subjects. The human fleet moved with precision that seemed almost supernatural. Ships appeared from nowhere, delivered devastating attacks, and vanished again before the Corvans could respond. Their weapons cut through Corvan armor like hot knives through butter. Their shields absorbed direct hits from plasma cannons that could level cities. Most terrifying of all, the humans were clearly holding back. Their attacks were surgical, designed to disable rather than destroy. They were studying Corvan technology even as they dismantled the invasion fleet piece by piece. David Hayes, still commanding his patrol ship from Neptune's orbit, watched the one-sided engagement with grim satisfaction. Every Corvan vessel that had participated in atrocities against human civilians was being systematically neutralized. The aliens who had laughed at human weakness were learning what that weakness had been hiding. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Corvan vessel Domination. It's Captain Vec." "Put him through." Vec's scarred face appeared on screen, but the arrogance was gone. In its place was something David had never seen in a Corvan officer before: genuine fear. "Human captain," Vec said, his translator struggling with the unfamiliar emotion in his voice. We surrender. Please, no more killing." David studied the alien who had once threatened to enslave his species. "Tell me, Captain, where are the human civilians you took from our mining operations? They are aboard our cargo vessels, unharmed. We will release them immediately." "All of them?" "Yes, all of them. We did not know. We thought you were weak. We were wrong." David nodded slowly. "Yes, you were wrong. But not about us being weak, Captain. You were wrong about what human weakness looked like. Across the solar system, the surviving Corvan ships were surrendering one by one. Out of 312 vessels, fewer than 50 remained operational. The rest had been systematically disabled by an enemy they had never seen coming. But Admiral Sterling wasn't finished. She opened another channel, this one directed at the galaxy beyond Earth's system. "This is Admiral Ruth Sterling of the Human Star Force, addressing all species in the Galactic Coalition. For 23 years, humanity has maintained a carefully constructed facade of technological inferiority. This deception was not born from cowardice, but from hope. We believed that by appearing harmless, we could avoid the cycle of aggression and retaliation that has plagued galactic civilization for centuries." She paused, letting her words sink in across a dozen worlds where alien leaders were frantically reassessing everything they thought they knew about humanity. That hope died today, with the murder of innocent human civilians and the attempted enslavement of our entire species. The galaxy has now seen what we are truly capable of when forced to defend ourselves. We pray this demonstration will be sufficient to prevent future aggression against human interests." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate a new and terrifying reality. The weakest species in the coalition had just revealed itself to be the strongest. The harmless humans who had begged for scraps at alien tables were actually apex predators who had been choosing to appear helpless. Every species in the galaxy would now have to recalculate their relationship with humanity. The balance of power that had existed for centuries had been permanently shattered by a single shot from a ship that was supposed to be primitive. Earth's masquerade was over. The age of human weakness was done, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Ambassador Corvus of the Althari Republic sat in his luxury transport ship, nervously adjusting his ceremonial robes as his vessel approached the human home world. The planet looked nothing like it had in previous diplomatic visits. Where once he had seen a backwater world with primitive infrastructure, now he observed massive orbital installations that dwarfed the greatest achievements of Althari engineering. The weak humans had built wonders that made his people's most advanced space stations look like children's toys. Corvus had been among the alien diplomats who had dismissed humanity as useful only for manual labor. He remembered laughing at their crude ships and pathetic attempts at galactic politics. The memory made him sick now, knowing how completely his people had been deceived. The transformation hadn't been limited to military technology. In just 6 months, humanity had revealed advances in medicine, engineering, and physics that left the galaxy's greatest minds struggling to understand the implications. They had been working on projects that solved problems the aliens didn't even know existed. "Ambassador," his pilot announced nervously, "we're being approached by a human escort vessel." Through his viewing port, Corvus saw a ship that exemplified everything the galaxy now feared about humanity. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest ache, sleek lines that suggested both art and deadly function. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and energy readings showed power levels that his instruments couldn't properly measure. "Althari vessel. This is Captain Lisa Park of the Human Diplomatic Corps," a pleasant voice announced, over the communication system. "Please follow our designated flight path to Earth Station 1. Corvus had heard about Captain Park. She had been one of the primitive patrol officers who had watched Corvan ships destroy human facilities without fighting back. Now she commanded a vessel that could probably destroy his entire home fleet. Single-handedly. "Of course, Captain Park," Corvus replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "We appreciate your escort." As his ship moved toward Earth Station 1, Corvus observed the changes that had swept through human space. What had once been scattered mining operations and small colonies were now thriving centers of commerce and research. Human merchant vessels, no longer disguised as slow, inefficient cargo haulers, moved between systems with technology that made Althari transportation look primitive. Most disturbing of all, other species were flocking to human space. Races that had been oppressed by the Corvan Empire or ignored by the Althari Republic were seeking human protection and alliance. Humanity was becoming the galaxy's new power center, and they were accepting refugees and allies with a generosity that baffled their former tormentors. Earth Station 1 was a marvel that made Corvus question everything his people had achieved. The massive structure orbited Earth like a second moon, its docking bays large enough to accommodate entire fleets. Gardens and parks were visible through transparent sections, creating the impression of a floating paradise rather than a military installation. President Maria Santos waited in the station's main conference room, along with Admiral Sterling and Captain David Hayes. The three humans who had orchestrated the galaxy's greatest deception sat calmly as representatives from every major species filed in for what would become known as the Sol Accords. "Fellow beings," President Santos began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's advanced acoustics, "we gather today not as conquerors and conquered, but as neighbors seeking to build a better future for all our species. The assembled delegates sat in uncomfortable silence. Many of them had spent decades treating humans as inferior beings, useful only for labor and resources. Now they faced the uncomfortable reality that humanity possessed technology and military capabilities that dwarfed their own achievements. Ambassador Corvus found his voice first. President Santos, the Althari Republic wishes to express our regret for any past misunderstandings regarding human capabilities. We hope to establish new diplomatic relations based on mutual respect. Santos smiled, and Corvus wasn't entirely sure he liked the expression. It was pleasant enough, but there was something behind it that suggested she remembered every slight, every dismissive comment, every time his people had treated humans as second-class citizens. "Of course, Ambassador," she replied. "Humanity has always valued peaceful cooperation over conflict. That's why we chose to appear weak rather than trigger a preemptive war against us." The words hit the chamber like physical blows. Every alien representative understood the implication. Their species had been evaluated as threats, and humanity had decided they were too aggressive to be trusted with knowledge of human capabilities. Captain Vec, of the surviving Corvan forces, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His empire had been shattered by humanity's revelation. Dozens of client species had risen in rebellion once they learned the mighty Corvans could be defeated. The once proud military machine that had terrorized half the galaxy was now desperately seeking any arrangement that would prevent complete annihilation. "The Corvan Empire accepts full responsibility for our actions," Vec said formally. "We are prepared to make reparations for all damages caused to human civilians and property." Admiral Sterling leaned forward slightly. "Captain Vec, what happened to the human workers taken from our mining operations?" "They have all been returned safely to human authorities," Vec replied quickly. "Additionally, we have provided full medical care and compensation for their suffering." "And the families of those who were executed as examples?" Vec's face fell. We have established a memorial fund. It is inadequate, but it is all we can offer for crimes that cannot be undone." David Hayes spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "The interesting thing about your memorial fund, Captain, is that it's being administered by the same Corvan officials who ordered those executions." The chamber fell silent. Vec's skin color shifted to a paler shade of gray as he realized his people's attempt at damage control had been seen through immediately. "Perhaps," David continued, "genuine reparations would involve handing those officials over to human justice systems." "Captain Hayes raises an important point," Santos interjected smoothly. "Accountability must be meaningful, not symbolic. However, humanity is more interested in preventing future atrocities than punishing past ones." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic civilization. Red zones marked areas of ongoing conflict. Yellow indicated regions under threat from aggressive expansion. Green showed the rapidly growing sphere of human influence. For centuries, galactic civilization has operated under the principle that might makes right, Santos explained. Strong species dominated weak ones. Resources were taken by force. Entire populations were enslaved or exterminated based on military capability alone. The display zoomed in on specific conflict zones. "Even now, while we meet in this chamber, 3 separate wars are raging across the galaxy. The Thek Imperium is attempting to conquer the Peaceful Merchants Guild. The Warrior clans of Nexus are raiding civilian shipping. The Machine Collective is forcibly assimilating biological species." Santos turned to face the assembled delegates directly. "Humanity proposes a different model. We offer protection to any species that renounces aggressive expansion and commits to peaceful development. In return, we ask only for fair trade agreements and respect for basic sentient rights." Ambassador Corvus felt a chill run down his spine. "And if species choose not to accept your Protection? Then they remain free to pursue their current path, Admiral Sterling replied. However, they should understand that aggressive actions against human allies will be met with appropriate responses. The threat was delivered with such casual politeness that it took a moment for its full implications to sink in. Humanity was offering a choice: join their peaceful alliance or remain outside it, but any violence against their protected species would trigger retaliation from the galaxy's most advanced military force. It wasn't conquest in the traditional sense. It was something far more sophisticated: the establishment of a new galactic order based on human values and enforced by human weapons. The Peaceful Merchants Guild has already requested human protection, Santos continued. So have the agricultural cooperatives of the Outer Rim and the research stations of the Academic Alliance. Interestingly, none of these species have been involved in military conflicts since joining our defensive network. The message was clear. Species that accepted human protection found themselves safer and more prosperous than those that relied on their own military forces. It was conquest through attraction rather than force, a strategy that was proving devastatingly effective. Captain Vec raised one trembling hand. What becomes of the Corvan Empire under this new arrangement? Santos studied him for a long moment. That depends entirely on your actions going forward, Captain. Your empire can choose to transform itself into a peaceful civilization focused on trade and development. You can release your client species to choose their own destinies. You can contribute to galactic stability instead of threatening it. And if we refuse, then you remain exactly what you are now, a declining power surrounded by enemies you created through centuries of aggression. Humanity will not attack you, but we will also not protect you from the consequences of your past actions. The genius of the arrangement was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity didn't need to conquer anyone. They simply had to offer protection and prosperity to peaceful species while leaving aggressive ones to face the enemies they had made. The galaxy's bullies would either reform or be destroyed by their own victims. There is one final point to address, Santos said, her tone becoming more serious. Some of you may be wondering about humanity's long-term intentions. You may fear that we will eventually reveal ourselves as just another conquering empire with better public relations. She activated another display, this one showing human space as it had existed before the revelation. Small, scattered colonies and mining operations. A few patrol ships, minimal infrastructure compared to major alien powers. This is what humanity actually needed to be happy and prosperous, she explained. We could have remained content with these modest holdings indefinitely. We revealed our true capabilities only when faced with slavery and genocide. Make no mistake, we prefer to be left alone to pursue our own development in peace. Santos turned off the display and faced the assembly with an expression of absolute conviction. Humanity has no desire to rule the galaxy. We simply refuse to be ruled by others. Create a civilization where species can develop freely without fear of conquest, and you will find humans to be your greatest allies. Continue the old patterns of aggression and domination, and you will discover why appearing weak while growing strong was the most dangerous strategy any species has ever pursued. The meeting ended with every delegation understanding that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The age of military conquest was giving way to something new, an era where the strongest power was also the most committed to peace. It was a paradox that would define galactic civilization for generations to come. As the alien delegates filed out of the conference chamber, each carrying humanity's message back to their homeworlds, President Santos allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The masquerade was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a peaceful galaxy would be far more challenging than hiding from a violent one. But for the first time in centuries, it seemed genuinely possible.